This is Dr. Jamie Kaufman, and this is Dr. Kaufman's Reflux Hour. I can't believe all the time has passed that I've never talked about obesity. Obesity is right up there with all of the top risk factors for reflux, both esophageal reflux and respiratory reflux. Imagine, if you will, we talk about don't increase intra-abdominal pressure when you're exercising. Don't do sit-ups, don't do planks, don't lift weights too heavy. But imagine you go to sleep and you have a 50-pound weight pushing on your stomach or a 100-pound weight. And so the absolute mass of the panniculus or the belly pushing on the stomach is a major risk factor, and it's way up there. There's good evidence that the more you weigh, the higher your BMI, the more you're likely to have reflux. So I'll talk a little bit about that. First of all, you can get your BMI, a body mass index, by going on the computer, and it has to do a lot about your age and your height and your weight. And it's a relative body composition parameter. BMI of 18.9 to 24.9 is normal, and then basically from 25 to 30 is overweight, and then over 30 is obese. Over 40 is morbidly obese, meaning you have risk of dying from your obesity. There are a couple of reasons. It also, besides the pressure on the stomach, it seems to slow gastric emptying and decreases lower esophageal sphincter pressure. Again, it may be a pressure phenomenon. But in any case, obesity and I was going to say all forms of acid reflux, both respiratory reflux and GERD, are definitely related, like Siamese twins. They're connected at the hip. And until you fix the reflux or until you fix the obesity, probably obesity first, you're stuck. It is not true that everybody has a genetic obesity. There's good data now that people who have obesity eat larger portions, eat more calories, eat more fast food, eat more processed food, and then less fiber, fruits, and whole grains. I think that the question of obesity in America is tied to everything else. When I was young, there wasn't quite so much obesity. There wasn't so much diabetes. There wasn't so much asthma. There wasn't so much heart disease. And so the relationship between these problems and obesity is also very well established. In fact, if you look at the arc, and I've done this, of fast food sales across time, they absolutely follow the curves of diabetes and reflux and so on. So that's all I have to say about that, except to say I'm going to talk a little bit more about obesity as we go through the questions. I've made it short today because the questions are really good questions, and some of them are a little bit redundant and some of them are brand new. I will tell you that if you haven't done so, look at jamiekaufman.com. I've written this blog for you, for people who have reflux and people who do consultations. And if you go and you type in, for example, there are 2 questions about hiatal hernia, an article will come up. If you have Barrett's esophagus, you can find the article on Barrett's. So the first question is very, very, very dear to my heart. And this is from Christy. Can you discuss subglottic stenosis and what role acid reflux plays in it? I sort of made my magnum opus fame in 1991 with the publication of a 378-page thesis on reflux. I was the first person in the world to do reflux testing in the throat and the esophagus simultaneously. Of all the groups, we looked at everything, all these different symptoms. People who had globus, people who had hoarseness, people who had esophageal and laryngeal cancer, all of them. By far, the highest relationship between the reflux testing being abnormal was the subglottic stenosis group. In my experience, subglottic stenosis is the cause of a subglottic stenosis. And it's horrifying to me that I went through the literature before I got on today, and I was surprised to find that it's just mentioned in passing as one of the causes. It often occurs after endotracheal intubation. Someone goes to sleep for a surgery, and the tube is placed in. Maybe the tube's a little big, and it causes a raw area, and then the reflux starts bathing it, and it ends up with a circumferential narrowing scar. But in my opinion, anybody who has subglottic stenosis, there are very few times when I recommend that someone needs surgery. But if you have subglottic stenosis, you need to do everything you need to do. You need to not eat late. You need to not drink alcohol. You need to not be eating the fatty cheese. You need to not be eating too much chocolate. But if you have subglottic stenosis, it's life-threatening, airway obstruction. It's often recurrent. And we began using incisions, radial incisions, and dilating this, and then getting people's reflux fixed. We actually could keep the subglottic stenosis from recurring. So whether your doctor knows it or not, it's time for you to get on the reflux train. And by the way, I want to make a general comment. And I'm going to make this general comment over and over and over, because there are a lot of questions about specific treatments and specific therapies. I've come to the point that I think reflux is a non-medical problem. Maybe not for you subglottic stenosis, Christy. It's not a medical problem. You can't find a better doctor with a better pill, with a better procedure. All the procedures that are lesser procedures seem to do nothing in the long run. And I've written in a recent article, does surgery stop reflux? And the answer is, I'll tell you a story. A woman a very nice woman, very thin, Upper East Side New Yorker, had a fundoplication by the best surgeon I know, and she consulted me not that long ago. And I asked her, what time do you have dinner? She said, 8 o'clock. I said, what time do you go to bed? She said, 10 o'clock. And I said, you have a 100% chance, not even 99%, 70-year-old woman, of refluxing all night, every night. And silent reflux. So she doesn't wake up in the middle of the night and doesn't have heartburn or indigestion. And so that's a woman who, as some of us old people are told, eat at 5. But in any case, there's clearly the ability to overcome a good fundoplication. It gets stiff and swollen, just like the original valve did, and it stops working. So if this woman were to change her diet and lifestyle, she'd find that her reflux would go away, and that her fundoplication ramp, the surgery that she had, didn't fall apart, didn't go away. It's just reflux on top of what was a good repair. So this comes up a lot. I won't read all of it. This is from Kate. I've done it. I'm 3 months after detox. I am completely free of all my symptoms. I've been very careful. How do I taper my medicine? Well, she's on 2 medicines. One is a non-medicine medicine, which is an alginate like Gaviscon or Reflux Raft or Reflux Gourmet. And those sort of shouldn't be tapered. I would be thinking that person ought to be having a swallow of an alginate before bed for quite a long time. In terms of tapering of medications, what I would recommend, we have 1 in the morning, 20 milligrams, 1 before dinner, 20 milligrams, and then 2 of 40 milligrams before bed. So I would recommend literally tapering them 1 each month. So first get rid of the morning one, then get rid of the dinner one, then get rid of 1 of the nighttime ones before bed, and then finally come off. And obviously, by coming off slowly, if you start to have a recrudescence of your reflux symptoms, you'll know it. So that's what I recommend. And you can come off the alginate, the Gaviscon too, but again, it's very harmless, and it's a little measure of safety, if you will. It's like a little insurance policy that seems to help people with supine, nocturnal, respiratory reflux, snore. And if you do go on the website, type that in, SNORR. That's what you all have, at least most of you. And so silent nighttime reflux is the American way. The nighttime evening meals are a big refueling meal of the meal with alcohol, etc. Famotidine makes me dizzy and weak. Can I take something else? I will tell you that I've put thousands and thousands of people on famotidine. It's very, very good. It's better than Zantac. It's better than the other ones that we've had, H2 antagonists. And if you really want to know, I've never seen anybody that had dizziness. It's listed. And so understand I wrote an article on famotidine because I was trying to poo-poo all the side effects that have been listed. Most of them I've never seen. But in any case, the only other H2 antagonist that's currently available is cimetidine. Its trade name is Tagamet. And you can take that. There's no reason to believe that all of them are the same in this group, just like you can have a problem with one antibiotic but not with all of them. So I would switch over to cimetidine. It says, does the Reza band help? It's actually Reza, R-E-Z-A. I know the man. It's interesting. He's an academic. There's not a single article in the peer-reviewed. Remember, the first thing you do is you go to PubMed, put Reza band in, and you don't find anything. So the fact that this is an academic who is doing research in an academic medical center and has never tried to do a study on his own device is interesting. The answer to the question is the Reza band doesn't help. For many people, it's a pain in the neck, literally. Does alkaline water lessen my acid for digestion? And the answer is no. You have more than enough acid. This idea that I don't have enough acid, what shall I do? I'm low on stomach acid. I've written about that fairly recently. There's no such thing. It's not a thing. So everyone has a lot of acid. If you take whatever, a Prilosec, instead of having a ton of acid, you'll have a half a ton of acid. So putting a little alkaline water in your stomach is not going to have any effect on digestion, and it doesn't matter even if you drink a quart. So I don't think that that's an issue. This is one where you got me. Why do you never recommend Gaviscon Advanced with peppermint flavor? I thought it doesn't affect reflux because the peppermint flavor is artificial. And the answer is I've never really investigated it. So I'm not sure whether it increases the risk at all. For example, I recommend gum chewing after eating, and we did the study with several different gums, and we found that even spearmint gum gave improvement after meals. I just read your new blog. This is Noel. And it would be safe to give my son alkaline water drops in his nose in the morning. He's getting saline. For those of you who have nasal congestion, it's one of your symptoms, particularly if you've got thick, the postnasal drip and all the rest of the symptoms that go with respiratory reflux. If you go on my article on the most recent one on alkaline water, you'll see that there's a little bottle, a little spray bottle. And this is really quite useful. I've talked about it several times. You can spray your vocal cords. Apparently this is now a thing on Broadway. Obviously, if you're doing 8 shows a week, you don't want to have reflux, you can spray your vocal cords. Pepsin dies at pH 8. I recommend water at pH 9.5 or higher. So the same company, if you go in there and look at these little cobalt bottles, they're 2-ounce bottles, they don't leak, but don't lose the tops. You can get nose drops. And with your son, in the morning, before he gets up, go ahead and put the drops in. And they can be used just like the saline drops and probably more beneficial. It's very interesting, this particular phenomenon, because I've had a number of people say, when I put the alkaline water drops in my nose, it burns. And my response now is, well, you must really have terrible reflux. And I don't know exactly why that happens, but when the reflux is gone, that kind of burning with alkaline water is gone. It's just, after all, water. I guess there's a war between the pepsin and the alkaline water. I've been on a detox diet for several days. This is a question from Jan, and she sees recipes. And the answer is all those recipes are just ideas. So if you want to do your grilled chicken with something else, and by the way, most all of the regular seasonings are okay. So the thyme and basil and oregano, those are fine. Stay away from the peppers, things with capsaicin, hot sauces, and so on. But you can take these recipes, and it's a theme. It's a theme on a variation. You make this soup with, instead of cauliflower, use another vegetable as its main base? Sure you can. So it's the ideas of low-fat, low-acid diet. The goal is to not have anything below pH 5. And I will tell you that in the blog, again, there's a list of the acidity of all the fruits and vegetables. For those of you who like smoothies, I've written an article on pH balancing. So if you put little ice cubes at a pH 9.5, this tiny little ones you can buy, special ice tray, if you put that in with a banana and some almond milk, 7.4 is its pH, at that point you can probably put anything else you want in there and it'll still be pH above 5. So that's called pH balancing. Yeah, I didn't ever talk much about sweet potatoes and beans. And sweet potatoes and beans are two of the finest things you can eat, and especially when you've got reflux. The next question is from Madeline. What is the best time to exercise? And in truth, it's in the morning when you get up. And you get up in the morning, you take your famotidine if you're on treatment, take some Gaviscon Advance or another Alginate before you exercise, and suck on a hard candy or chew gum while you exercise, and that'll help prevent reflux with exercise. And again, you're not doing the downward facing dog or any of the other exercises that cause reflux. If you got bad reflux, you shouldn't be doing them, nor should you be jumping around with aerobics. You're best off walking, lifting light weights as long as you can continue talking. The best thing you can do is an elliptical and so on. There's an article on exercise. And what's the best alkaline water to use to fight pepsin? The fighting pepsin bit is really stop refluxing for a month and let things heal. That's how you fight pepsin. But in the meanwhile, pepsin washes out at about 3 weeks. The spray helps. But there is no best alkaline water, but there is a worst alkaline water. Ironically, the one that's the most popular, because it's everywhere, a pH 9.5, has a phosphate in it. So you want a water, just read the ingredients, because you're going to buy the same one forever perhaps, and no phosphate. A lot of people like Trader Joe's, a lot of people like Alka-10. And by the way, people have asked me about the drops, the alkaline water drops. And so I bought them all that I could find, and I reviewed them, and they work quite well. At least 3 of them work quite well. So that's another option. There are 2 questions about hiatal hernia. The first is, I have a 2-centimeter hiatal hernia, and I have horrible breath. I've been about 15 years, been to all these different doctors. I was scheduled to have a Nissen fundoplication, but canceled. And all the dentists and ENTs and many gastros, have you ever heard of the symptom before? And the answer is, it really is quite common. And so what you need to do is to go on a detox program. The detox is very strict. It's no eating for 7 hours. It's 5 hours, sleeping on a high incline. The detox program, just type in reflux detox and you'll see it. If you have any of my books, the reflux detox is on page 46. And dropping acid and 48 on Dr. Kaufman's acid reflux diet. You shouldn't have surgery. You have terrible reflux. So you have to start at the beginning. The only way to cure reflux is diet and lifestyle. And the only people that I recommend to have surgery are people who have beat their reflux but have a lousy lower esophageal sphincter too. I had a woman who was quite old, and she did great, but on down. When I did TNA endoscopy, she had no valve, so I said, you know what, you can do this. You're healthy enough, and you'll be able to live a more normal life. So, and again, and those people who have life-threatening complications. In my trialogic thesis in 1991, I reported a man who kept getting small little laryngeal cancers, vocal cord cancers. And then after they removed them with the laser. They granulated. They didn't heal properly. And I finally figured it out and said, go get a fundoplication. And after 6 years of these little cancers coming and going, he was well. And 5 years of follow-up, he was still not making any new cancer. So again, reflux and laryngeal cancer are also particularly in non-smokers related. Hiatal hernia doesn't mean a thing, a 2-centimeter hiatal hernia, okay? So there are millions of people who have a 2-centimeter hiatal hernia and have no reflux, and the people with reflux who have no hiatal hernia, it's not of clinical significance. And it's not the 50s. In the 50s, they got a hernia, let's repair it surgically. That ship sailed. So hiatal hernia, in my experience, has no relevance, and it's not a deal breaker in any way. Patty is again asking a surgery and answer. She's been on PPIs for 30 years. I stopped using PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, in 2014 following the Danish study. The Danish study was a national study of 10,000 people, and what they showed statistically significantly is that long-term use of proton pump inhibitors increased, not decreased, your risk of getting esophageal cancer. And I sort of went, duh. And the reason is because you then go on and you had heartburn, the heartburn's being taken care of by the medicine, and you go on and eat and drink whatever you want, and the disease goes on unabated. So we'll talk a little more about Barrett's in a second. Here comes a doozy. Ozempic helps me lose weight, but reflux bad. What do I do? The answer is more than 10% of the adult male American population is on one of these medicines. I wrote an article on this not that long ago. It certainly does increase reflux. All the side effects are GI, and most of them reflux related. But interestingly, they're not all the same. So look at that post. And I can't remember, but I think Trulicity was the least, and Ozempic was the most in terms of a GI side effect. So they're not all the same. Furthermore, if you ask my opinion, taking a pill to lose weight and make your reflux worse, you're going to do it forever? What's going to happen when you stop? You're going to get fat again, and then you're going to go take pills? I don't know. Doesn't seem to me like a real solution. Now comes the one that I see all the time. I went for colonoscopy, and they said, well, let's do the other one, the upper endoscopy at the same time. And then the nurse called me and said I had Barrett's esophagus. For those of you who don't know what Barrett's esophagus is, it's considered a pre-cancer. In the old days, we told people you have 1% chance per year of getting esophageal cancer. It's deadly cancer. So the first thing is that the doctor didn't tell you you had Barrett's after the examination. So the first thing you need to do is you have probably the biopsy report, but you need to get the endoscopy report. And where it says findings, the findings are probably not going to say Barrett's. Here's the deal. GIs are told to take 4-quadrant biopsies with a big cup forceps. After the first biopsy, there's blood everywhere in the field, and in my opinion, they have no idea where they're taking the other biopsies. If you biopsy a little bit low, you get goblet cell metaplasia that looks like Barrett's. So, in my experience, for every 3 patients who came to me with a diagnosis of Barrett's, 2 of them didn't have it. A lot of people have an irregular Z-line, means that there's a little tiny bit of stuff growing up, but that is almost universal in refluxers over the age of 40, and it's not of clinical significance. And don't let your doctor say, you have early Barrett's. You either have Barrett's or not. There are clinical criteria. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to get that report, and you're not going to see Barrett's, and all of a sudden the biopsy comes back as Barrett's. You probably don't have it. More about Barrett's. Over the course of my career, I had about 800 Barrett's patients in my stable of patients. On my watch, 0 developed cancer, 0 developed even dysplasia, which is the stage before, and some of them had their Barrett's disappear. So Barrett's is not what gives you cancer. Reflux is what gives you cancer. So if you've got Barrett's, if you really have Barrett's, then you need to pay attention. You need to get a bed with an incline. You need to be drinking alkaline water. You need to be taking precautions for your life and your lifelong, and you'll take care of it. What a horror show. You go in for a procedure, and a nurse calls you and says you're gonna. Oh, by the way, you're gonna get cancer. No, that's not the way you do things, and it's not. You're not going to get cancer. You're going to take care of yourself, and like I said, you have a doctor. And this is a follow-up. I have Barrett's, and I've been on Prilosec for 20 years. Again, look at I've written about it. It's a blog about it. The Danish study. It says, can PPIs cause cancer? And the answer is they do. The treatment of reflux is not PPIs. PPIs ought to come off the market. Only trouble is 25 million people are taking them, and it's all about money. They're out of it. So they're not good drugs, terrible side effect profile, and this is what you get. Long-term use, increased risk of cancer. I'm not going to, Monica wants to know, suffered a lot of respiratory infections, and for 2 of them I needed antibiotics. So many things to say. The first is that people who have reflux get more infections, and infections make reflux worse, and antibiotics make them worse. I've written an article on meds and antibiotics, and antibiotics with steroids causes reflux bad. Not right then, but 2 weeks later. So there are some that are better than others. The routine ones that are used cause reflux. I personally found that if you get sick and you need an antibiotic, ask for Z-Pak. If you stop your reflux, I had a guy who had 5 infections a year. He's a writer, New Yorker, always getting colds, always getting all this. And finally fixed his reflux, and he stopped having that a recurrent infection thing. If you don't have, immunocompromised system, why are you getting all these? And the answer is that the reflux makes the lining membranes more vulnerable, and so the other side of the coin is, and also the infections in general make reflux worse. So it's a bit of a smogy. So this is from No Name. I don't have the name. LPR and GERD, not obese, been thin and worried about losing weight. And my experience is I was vegan for a while, and 4 years, and I got thin, and a little too thin. So I was looking in the cupboard, and I saw a can of sardines with olive oil and had 26 grams of protein. So that's when I became a Chegan. Yes, there's an article called Chegan, a cheating vegan. And so it's mostly plant-based, a lot of grains, do a lot of Oriental cooking, and poultry and fish. And fish is a great source. And by the way, you can have all the olive oil, all the avocados, and all the fish you want. And even though those are relatively high-fat items, none of them seem to cause reflux. So, no reason to lose weight. It's interesting. I didn't have a chance for breakfast this morning, which is really, really rare. And I'm gluten-free related to my psoriasis. And I found these things that are, they're oat bites, and they're gluten-free. They come with apple and with this is strawberry, I think. And they're tasty, and 140 calories each. So I ate two of them, and I just had a 280 calorie breakfast. They're not cheap. I mean, they're 85 cents each. But after all, if you went and you had breakfast, even if you made your own breakfast, that's still a pretty good price. So there are a lot of tricks. If you look at my article on breakfast, you'll see that there are a lot of options. And one of them is to have last night's meal again. So if I have, one of my favorites is salmon with my rice and cumin, which is in the recipe book, and then with green beans. And guess what? There's an extra piece, and I eat it in the morning, and I have it for breakfast, or I use the salmon in rice with some olive oil and egg whites. And that actually recipe is in the breakfasts. I don't understand this one exactly, so I'm not going to answer it. My stomach aches increase in the evening when I become hungry. I found that if you get hungry and you're doing a fast before bed, which is a good idea, especially at the beginning of your treatment, chamomile and ginger tea work very well. I've just written an article on ginger. You buy the ginger root, you take a couple of slices, you drop it in, you put the hot water in, I cover it 10 minutes, and then add a sweetener. If you're doing this on an intermittent fast, evening fast, then you can't use sugar or honey, because anything with calories turns on insulin, turns on glucagon, to turn the stomach back on. So there's nothing wrong with using an artificial sweetener. I'm personally a favor Sweet and Low, which is, I guess, saccharin. I don't think I'm going to die of saccharin. So chamomile, try chamomile. Usually it's more than a cup, and I find I have a cup usually around 8 o'clock. I have a cup around 10. I go to bed about 1, between 12 and 1 often. So that's something you can try. And I'm not sure exactly why the ache. Those who have LPR and GERD, just TNE, is TNE enough? Do you need to be having an awake TNE with an ultra thin, or be put to sleep and have the GI deal? The answer is, in the hands of someone who's experienced transnasal esophagoscopy, is not only better, more accurate, it is the wave of the future. Unfortunately, Medicare made the reimbursement for TNE so low that a lot of people who used to do it don't do it anymore because they're actually losing substantial money. So TNE should be the wave of the future, and I'll see what I can do about that once I get inside Medicare, and I hope I do. Coffee and caffeine. I was a coffee drinker. I had the expensive machine that made espresso and all the other variations. And over the course of, this was about a year ago, I started having a little upset with my coffee in the morning, just first thing. And then one morning I got up and I had my coffee and I went and threw up. So I did a little research. A cup of coffee has 90 milligrams of caffeine, and I need it to get going. And so I went to English breakfast tea. English breakfast tea has 60. So I have two English breakfast teas in the morning. Then I can add a little more caffeine. 200 milligrams across the day is very good, meaning under that. And so I'll have an Earl Grey or something else. And then I move to things like turmeric and other non-caffeinated teas. So I've become sort of a tea fanatic. I'm like an English person. Someone comes in, I ask, cuppa? So time is up today. I want to thank you all for listening. And particularly, I've not gotten to all the questions, so I'll put them on for next time. And please sign up for the blog. Put your name in. All you'll get is an email with the topic each week. If it interests you, you'll open it. If not, you'll delete it. And tell people this resource is important. And more and more is going on YouTube, as this will do after my assistant gets at it. So again, thank you and bye. Have a good no reflux life.